Hitman 2-3, this is Hitman 2-2, over.
Hitman 2-2, you're coming in weak and unreadable. Try cleaning your handset. Try again.
Hitman 2-3, this is Hitman 2-2, how you read me now?
2-3 has you loud and clear. Out.
Hitman 2-3, this is Hitman 2-2, over.
Roger, I got your microphone. Please fill me in on your situation. Alright. Calm down, buddy. We're gonna be down here. We're not gonna lie. Calm down, property form. Don't hold. You have the second foot coming down. And if nobody can do it, these guys can do it. So just relax. Be cool.
Okay, so we're going to start just with your name, age, and where you're from.
Good morning. Peter Rosemond. I'm 73 years old, and I currently live near Cessnock in a little village called Evermain, South Island. The first job I got was on a poultry farm, and my job was to shovel the manure out from under the cages into corn bags. Corn bags, quite large bags, they were almost as tall as me. So I was just using a square shovel to shovel the manure out from under the cage into corn bags, and I was being paid £6 per bag. I learnt a really good ethic in that. The harder you work, the more you get paid.
Yep.
So that was really helpful, and it set a course for my attitude to work for life. Work hard and do the job the best you can the first time. Don't go back and have to fix it. I became an apprentice bricklayer.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, I did that, and we were working on a project, and I was watching people walk past in the shopping centre in the streets, and I kept wondering, I wonder what he's going to do today. And I'd look back at mud brick, mud brick, mud brick. That's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to mix cement, I'm going to stack bricks, I'm going to wheel wheelbarrows, and I'm going to lay some bricks. I wonder what he's doing today. That grew on me to a point that when I turned 17, I convinced my mum that I really should leave my apprenticeship and join the army.
Okay.
So
what did your mum think of that?
She didn't want me to. The experience she had with my dad, I think was a big influence in that. He was a Second World War vet, and she was worried about Vietnam. And I convinced her that I'm 17, Mum, you have to be 19 to go. It'll all be over by the time I'm 19. And I'm only joining for 3 years anyhow. So, but I get a full adult wage, I get somewhere to live, and I get all my work clothes and everything supplied. I can contribute by sending stuff home, money, whatever, and I'm out of the house, you don't have to feed me. They were at the tail end of their schooling, they were starting to think about jobs and part-time jobs and all of that, and I just knew that it's time. Move out, make some space.
Okay.
Because we're still living in the same four-room house.
So the attraction of joining the military was the stability, the security, that you would have financial security?
Financial security and all of that. And in those days, you had to be 21 to get a full adult wage. I was on an apprentice wage, and I could go straight to a full adult wage, which was considerably more.
At the age of 17?
That was a financial advantage. But it was the challenge of, I'd seen lots of soldiers because I lived not that far from Singleton. Vietnam was a big thing. And I'd seen lots of soldiers in uniform and all of that. And I was looking for a pathway to find who I was. Yeah, and as good as bricklaying is, and I still respect bricklayers, and it's a skill, and it's a terrific skill if you do it well, but it wasn't me, and I wanted to find out just who I was and where's my life going to go. It's not going to be here where he was at that time. Yeah.
I'm wondering, what came first, Pedro? Was it being going to Vietnam or being assigned to a tank crew?
Being assigned to a tank crew. After I left Kapuka, I went to the School of Armour at Puckapunyal. I immediately got put on a communications radio course to become a radio operator.
Monday I started a tank gunnery course to become a tank gunner.
Was that your choice, or...?
Because I got on that radio course was assigned to tank gunnery. I couldn't deploy to Vietnam with that squadron because I was too young. So that was B Squadron. So I got put in A Squadron, which was training in 1969 to go to Vietnam. And initially I was a Troop A gunner in one troop in A Squadron. And then I got promoted to Lance Corporal, my first promotion, just after I turned 19. And I got put into training to become a tank commander. They told me they were going to put me on a promotion course and I was going to be put on a pathway. They wanted to see a commitment. I wanted to give the commitment, so I changed from 3 years to 6 years. So I'm now committed for 6 years and the Army is invested in training me. So I became a tank commander. I was 19. I had another 5 or 6 months as a tank commander in Australia with a crew in one troop. And we came in off our final exercise and I was scheduled, I believe, to go to Vietnam the following year. And the Sergeant Major called out a list of names to be sent to Vietnam in the next month as reinforcements. And mine was the first name. And I was shocked.
Why were you shocked?
Well, the plan was I was going to Vietnam in early 1970, and this was October 1969, and you're going next month.
Were you excited by the prospect? Was that something that you actually wanted? You
Yes.
wanted to go to Vietnam?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell me a bit about why?
Why? It was validation of what I was doing. I didn't see it as 19. I didn't believe or see that there was any possibility that I would be hurt or anything. It was an adventure, it was a challenge, it was fulfilment of all the training that I'd done to prove that I could do my job. And I guess the culture in the squadron was that we were really good at what we did, and Vietnam was the natural pathway. Proud to go and serve the country. Yeah. In a patriotic way, but in a personal way, it's a fulfilment of, I've done all of this training and it's an opportunity to put it into practice and validate me. Yeah.
At which point do you find out that you're finally going into battle?
In 1969, our final training ended with a 3-month exercise out on the Puckapunyal range. So we left the barracks and we lived on the range in a mock Vietnam-style Nui Dat layout. Our OC, the Major, had been to Vietnam. He'd had a look at the layout of the tank squadron on the ground, where things were in relation to where troops were in relation to other troops, where the headquarters was, how it all worked. And we duplicated that on the Puckapunyal range. So we adopted our troop location and we lived there in a tent with our tank for 3 months. Occasionally we'd get Friday night to go into barracks and do washing, have the night off to go have a beer and go to the movies, and back out in the range.
And were you in barracks out on the range, or were you sleeping in tents?
Slept in tent, just like we would in Vietnam. the same tents that the soldiers in Vietnam had.
And what was that like, going from barracks to out on the range? Was that exciting, or was it
It's just
really
bloody
difficult?
Bloody hard work. It was good to be out on exercise. It was actually really good to be on your tank with your crew doing your job, rather than being in barracks with all of the routine of room inspections and parades and other duties and guard duties and all of that. If you're in the field, you're living on your tank, you've got to service your tank, you take your turns during the day, during the night at security pickets or radio pickets, and all of that's part of the routine of securing yourself or your crew or your tank or your troop.
And can you just tell me what you did during that time before heading off to Vietnam?
Well, it was a shock to me to get told you're going on leave next week. You've got a week of pre-embarkation leave, so you've got 2 weeks, and you're off to Vietnam. Yes, sir. So worked my butt off that week to clear my Q store responsibilities, that radios and weapons and all of the control things that I was responsible for. Had to get all of that handed in, march out of the barracks, clear all my personal kit, work out what I needed to take, put it in a trunk and send it, and what I needed to leave. So the leave stuff was packed up so that when I went on leave, I had a couple of pairs of city clothes and a couple of bags that I was just going to leave with somebody till I come back.
Right.
So I went on leave. I went home to spend the time with my mum, and told her I was on leave for a week, and I had to report back to Sydney. And I had a couple of bags and I wanted to just leave them in the shed, if that was all right. And she said, why? And I said, it's stuff that I don't need, and I just need to get it out and store it somewhere for a while. So they were put away, and I had a couple of pairs of jeans and t-shirts that I was wearing for that time, and a bit of time with a girlfriend and my brothers and sisters. And the second last day I said to my mum, I'm actually going to Vietnam. She took that really well, a tough conversation, but I think by that time she'd come to realise that I was good at what I was doing. I'd been promoted and all of that, and I think it had turned to, she was proud of me. I arrived in Saigon, and back in uniform, of course, and it was the busiest place I'd ever, Tom Sahnet Airport in Saigon, and it was the busiest place I'd ever been. It was a military operational air base, and there were jets taking off and jets landing and big aircraft with cargo type stuff, American, Australian, everything from jets to bombers to cargo planes coming and going, and a commercial airport. And
So it's just sensory overload.
it's sensory overload, it's tropic, so all of a sudden it's 32 degrees and stinking hot and all of that. They shuffled us across with our carry bag and put us in a small cargo aircraft, and we took off, flying at a low altitude from Saigon to Nui Dat, and we land on the airfield there.
Low altitude.
Low altitude.
Why is that?
Well, low altitude you appear and disappear very quick, but if you're at a couple of thousand feet, you're susceptible to anti-aircraft stuff.
Okay.
So, zoom, you've flown over whatever's on the ground. Before you're seen, you're gone.
I see.
Or
Yeah.
before you're heard, you're gone. Yeah.
Okay, so you go from
Sound is always
Saigon.
behind the aircraft. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay.
fly at low altitude over the jungle, and we're getting a sort of pretty good idea of paddy fields and jungle and all of that sort of stuff in real life. We arrive at Nui Dat and we get off, and a couple of people there to meet us and call the roll and make sure everybody that's supposed to be there is there, and we get on a truck, and because we're not a unit, deploying, where all Rio reinforcements being sent as a reinforcement contingent. All those going to the tank or cav get on that truck. Those that go to engineers get on that truck, and so on. And we went to the tank squadron location, which was to forward delivery troop. And this was it wasn't a tank troop as such, it was a small group where we did in-country orientation training and acclimatisation for a couple of days, a couple of weeks. Some people a couple of days, some people a few weeks. They had a couple of tanks that they could maintain, so it was hands-on, it was all the equipment. So part of your orientation was the climate, the environment, the routine, the location where everything was, but also working on a tank, so you kept your place, if you like, and your skills and everything just going. In forward delivery troop, on the first night I was in Vietnam, we were able to listen into the tank squadron and the cav squadron radio nets. So we heard what the troops were doing. They were sending in location reports, so where we're staying the night, what we're at or what we're doing. And there were a couple of incidents that occurred that really shook the tree. Like, holy shit, this is real.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and what was that like for you?
Sorry?
How would you describe how that made you feel? You know, really getting a sense of the reality of what you were about to do.
And it was a sort of, as I said earlier, it's about confirming where I fit in, can I do my job, am I good enough, all of that. But those incidents brought home the reality, this is for real. People get wounded, people get killed, and it can happen in the blink of an eye. And if you like, the simplest way I can put it is, this is actually a real gunfight. We deployed the next morning after troop barbecue that night. Next morning we're out, and we're only out of Nui about an hour. And I said to the corporal beside me, I was the loader operator in his tank, a guy called John Keys. I said to John on the radio intercom, this guy is doing everything that I've been trained in Australia not to do. And he said, yeah mate, he doesn't learn. And this was the corporal that I was going to replace after this operation. John got on the radio to talk to the troop leader to tell the corporal to get off the track. I'll explain that. One of the problems in Vietnam was if you were driving on a track or you were forced to drive over a specific piece of ground, it was highly likely that the opposition, Viet Cong, North Vietnamese, would mine that location. So you didn't drive on tracks unless you had to, and if you did have to, you got the engineers to clear it. And this guy was driving right up the middle of a track. And I'm talking to John, John's talking to the troop leader, and the explosion went off under the tank. So I'm an hour out of Nui Dat. On my first operation, not the tank in front of me, but the one in front of that was destroyed on a mine. So we immediately go into the mine drill, shooting and protection and guns facing out and all that sort of stuff. But then we go into the casualty evacuation, check on the crew, all of that sort of stuff. And it turned out that the mine went off right under the gunner's seat, under the hull of the vehicle. And the major impact was right under the gunner's seat. So the gunner was thrown upwards, smacked his head into the top of the turret, and he was semi-conscious. So I'm learning, so get my hands dirty, get in and help get him out of the gunner's seat, out of the turret, on a stretcher, all the things happen, call for casualty evacuation, secure the area, get the gunner out, check on the other crew and all of that. So we turn around and we're back in Nui Dat that afternoon.
Okay, so what specific operations did you take part in? Were they all sort of like that? Did they vary in nature and in...
An operation could be a couple of days. It could be out tonight, back tomorrow. A security thing where a search of a village was going to occur. We might deploy to put protection around that in the late afternoon or in the afternoon. Everything would happen at daylight the next morning. The village would be cordoned, searched and all of that. Finished by mid-afternoon, we're back in camp.
So Pedro, you've experienced your first operation. You start to get involved in more operations in different situations. You're now serving your 12 months of your 12-month tour of duty. Can you give me an overview and a sense of what your day-to-day life and routine was during that tour of duty?
Okay. I took over in late '69 as the crew commander of what was call sign 1 Charlie. That's the junior corporal in 1 troop in A Squadron. Initially it was B Squadron, because that was the squadron, but after a couple of weeks there was a changeover of command from the OC of B Squadron to the OC of A Squadron, and on that changeover of command the squadron name changed and the call sign numbers changed from 2-1 to 1-1, and the squadron thought we didn't need to say 1-1, 1-2, we could just say 1, 2, 3. So I became 2-1 Charlie, turned into 1 Charlie, my radio call sign. So I was forever known as 1 Charlie. My crew at that time were together. We did several operations. Some were quite significant, long distance and so on. Others were short duration. In February 1970, we got involved in an operation that grew out of what was considered a minor incident, where an infantry company was deployed protecting some engineering earthworks, and some mortar rounds were fired by the Viet Cong over a hill onto that quarry position. So there was a reaction to that mortar fire. Our troop was designated to capture or destroy that mortar position. We did that, we redeployed, and then the infantry took on a more aggressive posture and started ambushing around that region. And in mid-February, a major incident occurred where an infantry platoon engaged what they thought was a few enemy. Turned out to be close to 100. In the middle of the night, the tank troop that had replaced us were deployed from the quarry protective area to go pick up another platoon and get to that first platoon in heavy contact and provide support. Over the next, that was the 15th, by the 18th, 19th, the operations had escalated to a situation where a prisoner had been captured, information had been gained that there was a major force in a defensive position in a valley. And that took on a whole new context where the entire tank squadron, the entire cavalry squadron, and almost all of the infantry battalion were deployed to destroy this enemy position. It was quite a significant. Australia refers to that operation as Operation Hammersley. It went from mid-February to mid-March, about a month. The intensity part of it was the first week or so. A lot of heavy fighting, a lot of material and people wounded, killed and destroyed. That changed a lot of things for me because I was directed, push in there into the jungle. I did what I was told, although I objected to it, because where I was being told to go was where I'd gone some weeks before to see if we could capture or destroy this mortar. And it was putting me on a track which was contrary to what we're trained to do, as I said before, about driving on tracks likely to be mined. The further I went, the more uneasy I was, and I was in the process of telling my driver to brake right, get off the track, and even if that meant slowing down and pushing down jungle, I didn't care, and the mine went off under my vehicle. Destroyed my vehicle, wounded the ladder operator, and the gunner. We got them out, evacuated them, and the ammunition in the floor had all burst from the size of the mine underneath the centre of the tank, and all of the propellant cordite caught on fire. So it's like 2 funnels of flame out of the turret. It was 10 years later that I actually found out I had compression fractures from most of my lower body. But it is what it is. I just kept doing my job. I was sore, it was hard to sleep. And I can sit here and say that I was never debriefed, I was never counselled, and I was never given a medical checkup or x-rayed or anything.
You just went straight back out on...
Straight back out, new tank, new crew, and start again. Operations went on. The longest operation I ever did was 10.5 weeks out of New Edat, and the shortest was an overnight, out today, back tomorrow. So
for those 10 weeks, you were just living inside the tank? Where did you sleep?
I'll talk about living on the tank generally. If we were in what we consider to be a safe area, like alongside or inside a fire support base, we would put some stretchers on the ground, put a tarp out, and sleep on the stretchers beside the vehicle or behind the vehicle, well, with a bit of a shelter. So that was comfortable living. You had your army blankets, and you make a pillow out of a spare set of clothes or something, and you were living comfortably. You could have a shower. A shower was a shower bucket with a nozzle on the bottom, and you hung it on something. Well, we would stick a crowbar in the engine grill and hang it over the side, put the shower bucket on it, and put some old clothes or cardboard or something on the ground and stand on that so you're not standing in mud. You get half a jerry can, so you got 10 litres of water for a shower. So you tip it into the bucket, get underneath, turn the thing on, get wet, soap everywhere, turn it on, rinse off, that was your shower. Everybody on the tank crew took a turn at cooking. So what I said earlier about cooking may have caused some casualties. The rations were a box, and they were same old every day. So you had to invent different ways of cooking the same thing. So sauce or spice or pepper or something made a difference, but it was the same stuff. We had interactions with the local South Vietnamese army, and through that you went to their depot to meet up with them. They would climb on the tanks and we'd deploy off and do stuff. And it was working with the local forces, cooperation type stuff, where you built relationships with Australia, South Vietnamese military. Australian soldiers tend to connect with kids. I think it's an innate caring thing that the kids are important. You make a relationship with the kids, you build a trust that they have for life. Aussies are good people, so building bridges.
Your tour of duty is coming to an end. Tell me how you were feeling at this time.
I've never really reflected on that. I just kept doing my job, knowing that I had to do my job until the last day. By that time, we'd gone through issues of learning what was going on in Australia, the protests about Vietnam, and the wharfies not loading the ship to send Australian supplies, the posties going on strike, refusing to handle our mail to and from, that sort of thing. So we knew that there was a change in the sentiment in Australia, but we didn't understand or comprehend really what that sentiment was all about. So just do your job, keep doing what you're doing, and you'll go home when you're finished. And in the last 2 weeks that we were there, because we were taking anti-malarial pills and other stuff every day to stop us getting malaria, taking all sorts of precautions with mosquito repellent and all of that sort of stuff, to detox the body, we were given a bunch of pills. And everybody who got them knew that they had 14 days to go, so they were called happy pills. So when you got your happy pills and you started taking them, you knew you were on a rundown, 13, 12, 11 sleeps and so on. Well, my crew, 3 of us, were all going home the same day. So we were abandoning the gunner to the new crew. That's actually how I felt. I was abandoning Bruce, my gunner, to another commander, another driver, another loader for another 3. He had 3 months to go.
So mixed feelings then, because you're abandoning your friendships and connections and something that you've been living for 12 months, but also an excitement, would you say?
Yeah, totally mixed feelings, but we were still out on operations. So we weren't back in base. So other units in different circumstances, when you've got 14 days to go, you come back into base, you start winding down, you start taking your happy pills, and you're preparing to go home, you pack your gear, do some shopping at the local base shop or whatever. But we're still out in operations, and we're taking our happy pills and shaking up the other guys in the troop, and one less, all this sort of stuff. And we got involved in a manoeuvre that resulted in a shooting thing. And I still recall my driver saying to me, "I'm too short to be doing this," meaning my time left is too short. And I said, "Mate, that's all of us." Yeah. The next day we were brought back into Nui Dat, and we had a few days, about a week, to hand over my vehicle to a new guy and go through that process. And then all of a sudden we're on a plane and we're out of there. And at daylight, I was back at my mum's house in Cessnock with my mum. She'd remarried and in those years, and so I was at the house, and my younger brothers and sisters and my wife and a baby, and it was like I was completely disoriented, lost. Didn't want to go out of the house, didn't want to talk to people, didn't want to see anybody I knew from the past. I just wanted to sort of find myself in this lost world. I didn't know where I fit, and that became really difficult because my parents wanted to, or my mum and her new husband wanted to go out to dinner on the second night that I was home. So we went to the local workers' club for dinner, and there was an announcement there that we welcome Peter home and all that, and I didn't want to be there. The crowd, the environment, the noise, all of that to me was, I just wanted to get out of there the whole time. But I went to the bar to buy a beer, and one of my school friends said to me, "Hi Pete, I haven't seen you for years, where you been?" And I said, "I just got back from Vietnam the other day." And, "Oh, you've been there?" "Yeah, that's right, I've been there." And she turned and walked away, and I went, I just said to my mum, "I'm going home. I can't handle this, I've got to go home." And there were things that had happened in Vietnam with Americans, and I learnt later that it was about "you been there" was really reference to "you've been there, you're a baby killer, you're part of that culture thing that happened with Americans in Vietnam, not us." And so I decided, I had 8 weeks leave that I could use, and I decided I didn't want 8 weeks leave, I wanted to go back to work. Nobody wanted to talk about, "I'm a Vietnam vet, I went to Vietnam," or anything like that, outside your soldier cohort mates, guys you'd serve with or guys you were serving with.
And there was no counselling or support provided by?
Well, Vietnam Veterans Counselling Service and all those sorts of things were invented by Vietnam veterans years later, leading into the 80s, which nearly a decade later, all of those things started to be created by Vietnam veterans who were trying to establish what they should have had and trying to educate government and nation that they were treated badly. Now, Australia has a reputation at this. They did the same thing to the Korean veterans. The Second World War veterans treated the Korean veterans like they weren't in a real war. The RSL and the Second World War Korean veterans treated the Vietnam veterans like they weren't in a real war. And guess what's happening today?
Afghanistan.
They're not treating Afghan, Iraqi veterans like they're real veterans. Yeah? And the evidence of that is very easy to show if you look at the number of ex-service organisations that exist today. Mates for Mates and Soldier On and all of those organisations exist because the RSL didn't embrace the current cohort group of veterans. All those big organisations like the RSL and so on are struggling with how they can fix that. Yeah, I'm glad they're struggling and I hope they can fix it. But when you're treated like we were treated, you create your own organisation. And that's what happened. Vietnam Veterans Federation, Vietnam Veterans Organisations are about Vietnam veterans looking after themselves. Mates for Mates, Soldier On are about current day veterans looking after themselves because the big things don't look after them.
So Peter, I've only got one question left to ask you. What did you learn about yourself from your experiences in Vietnam?
That's really hard for me to answer. I think I was mentored by wonderful people in those that trained me, not everybody, special people who trained me and treated me in a certain way, I learned a lot from. People who trained me and treated me in a terrible way, I learned more from. What not to do. So, following on from Vietnam, I tried to emulate the best of the people, tried not to do the worst of the people, but in all of it, be me, think it through what I'm doing, think through how I want to do it, and regardless of other people's opinions and all of that, be myself 100% of the time. So make my own decision, my own pathway, and do it to the best of my ability, whatever it was, even if it was just reading a paper and analysing parts of that paper. It didn't matter. Building something, do it to the best of your ability. So I think out of Vietnam, I would say that was the influence that still sticks with me. Think for myself and do it my way.
That's amazing. Yeah. Pedro, thanks so much for sharing all of that with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. We were kids, we thought we were indestructible, so we just got on with what we were confronted with. Thank you.
Thank you.
Someone to save me, no, and don't come running to blame me. From miles away I can tell that something's off. The way you look and how you pause when you talk, I think you said enough. You